Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our regular council session of Wednesday, February 26, 2025. I will now call the meeting to order and issue the territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Item 2, administrative and procedural issues. 2.1, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented unless there are any changes to the agenda. Moved by Councillor Telling, seconded by Councillor Lockhart. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Thank you very much. Declaration of the conflict of interest. As per the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, members are required to declare a conflict of interest prior to any discussion on the matter. 2.3, approval of the minutes of the motion to approve the minutes of the January 22nd, 2025 regular council meeting. Could I have a motion to that effect, please? Moved by Councillor Strong, seconded by Councillor Fromm. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried. Motion to approve the minutes of the February 5th, 2025 special council meeting. Motion for that, please. Moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Lockhart. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Item 2.4, business arising, is included in the meeting package, and I'll turn it over to our CAO, Mr. Harrod.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think I can talk that fast, though. Okay? Just giving you the heads
I'll
up.
slow down when we get
okay.
to the important stuff.
Don't
worry.
It's all good. I want to manage the expectation. I'm talked out. Business arising is at pages 12 and 13 of Council's information package. It's in two lots, as it always is. On page 12 is the most recent council meeting, which was on January 22nd, 2025. There are 9 items there, and I'm happy to say that we can mark all of those complete. On page 13, which is the ongoing council action list from previous council meetings, there are 5 actions there. 1 is marked complete, which was the discussion about the pros and cons of establishing fines for repeat unsightly premises violations, and I think there will be some policy implications of that coming forward after the discussion we had at Committee of the Whole. And there are 4 items that are still outstanding: sale of surplus property, demolition order, designation of some lands in the Swan Creek Protected Wilderness Area, and the execution of the Shaw Rural Housing Development Agreement in Spring Hill. All of those they just have little wrinkles in them that are preventing them from being 100% complete at this time, but we continue to work on them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrod. Does anyone have any questions on this report from Mr. Harrod?
Question.
Questions? No questions. That's good. Moving right along. 2.5, public hearings or presentations. 2.5.1 is a presentation from the GOVRC, so I'll ask you folks to come forward now. And I will remind you as you're coming forward that you have 15 minutes. So if you want to allow time for questions, you should stop short of the 15 a little bit. Once you're settled and ready, you can state your names and you can begin your presentation.
I'll give you a wave. You got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Williams, the Executive Director of the GOVRC Workshop in Spring Hill. This is my woodworking supervisor, Rob Usher. I want to thank you for the opportunity to allow us to discuss our renewal plan. We're very excited about this plan. We've been planning it for 15 months, and now we're ready to get started. Everybody has the renewal plan I sent ahead of time. I'm not going to read off it. It's 8 pages. I'm just going to summarize and give a Coles Note version of everything. I'm going to read just a portion of it here to give an introduction of who we are. So GOVRC Workshop.
Sir, I'm just going to interrupt you, Paul, just 1 sec. So for some reason, I'll take responsibility for it. We didn't distribute that and we didn't print it. So I'm just going to suggest that maybe we bump you to next and we'll print your presentation while the other folks are presenting, and then everybody will have the benefit of your materials. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah,
all right.
That's fine.
You've practiced your start too. You can start.
Awesome. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Can you take care of that, Amanda? Yeah.
That's okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Amanda's on it. She'll give you some instructions there in a second. Okay, so we'll move along. 2.5. 5.2, a presentation regarding the Ketchum Swinging Bridge from the Fitness Crossroads Community Association. Welcome, folks. And welcome.
No, that wasn't our time, was it?
No?
Well, first of all, thanks for making time for us on the agenda. We appreciate how busy you all are, and a thank you also for being in public service and doing the jobs that you do. And if it didn't sound like too much of a suck up, we can get going. So I'm here with a couple of people. Blair Andres is the president of the association. Jack Brown, Andrea Chappell is the treasurer, and I'm Brian McDonald. I'm one of the board members. So we're going to talk a little bit about who the TCCA is, why we're here, brief project overview, some financial overview. We want to talk about the benefits to the municipality of this grant application, and then some time for questions and discussion. So we'll make a start and make it march from here. So a little bit about the Tidnish Crossroads Community Association. It's been around for quite a long time, and has, roughly 170 members, I think. So it administers a number of physical properties, the community center. There is a rental building that we have at the Tidnish Bridge Crossroads, and the Scoop Shack was the most recent business that was there. So I think the biggest thing that the Community Association is about is promoting the well-being, physical and cultural of the area. So we deliver a lot of different programs and activities, among them the Wild Game Dinner, which I think you probably all have heard of at one point in time or another. Stop smirking, Rod. The Summer Festival, the student bursary program that we've been awarding for years now, and things like the annual Christmas Kids Party. Father's Day breakfast, yeah, too, yeah. So that takes us next to why we're here, and this is the cable suspension bridge. It's often referred to as the Ketchum Swinging Bridge. It's an iconic landmark of the area, and it is an integral part of the trail system that it connects to. So the options that we had in front of us were either to try and remediate the existing structure or to replace it. Remediation wasn't going to be possible given the materials that were at hand and the code requirements that go with replacing that kind of equipment. So we are working on a replacement project to replace what really is a landmark of the community and of the area. It's also important to note that we've engaged the community in a couple of community information meetings. We've had this topic brought up at our annual general meeting, and it has a broad, pretty much unanimous support that this thing cannot be allowed to be taken down and destroyed, which is the only other option, because it is currently not fit or safe for purpose. All right, so this is just a couple of sales slides here about how beautiful the bridge is and how important it is. So we can go through. This is just to emphasize that the bridge is not only a summer or a tourist activity, it's a year-round activity as it connects to the trail system. And then the next slide gives you an idea of the width of the current bridge and the condition that it's in at the current time. So that is you would not walk on that, I think, if you were not prepared to be very, very careful and would go around the do not cross signs. Okay. Part of this project is also the protection of the landmark stone culvert bridge that was put in as part of the Chignecto Bridge Railway, Bridge Railway. So part of this project is protecting that landmark as well. That's just a little bit of the temporary bridge decking that's going to be, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that in the next slide. So the project overview, we've got an approved engineering set of diagrams. We're replacing the existing cable suspension bridge with a new one, 218 feet long, 7 feet wide. And I'm not going to read through this, but it gives you an idea of the scope of the project and helps to bring some perspective to the financial aspects, which I think are next. So the total project cost is going to be around 1.2 or 1.3 million dollars. And the breakdown is there. I think you have this presentation, I believe. Yes or no? No, okay. Well, so yeah, we'll go through it. Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to install a temporary bridge to allow equipment and materials to move in without damaging any of the infrastructure that I showed you earlier on, including the stone bridge. We have, yep.
The temporary bridge is over the stone bridge
Yeah.
to protect it.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's going to be trail work on either side to ensure that we can accommodate equipment and improve the trails. The concrete abutments that anchor the suspension bridge on either side have to be replaced. And then there's a lot of money for the removal of the existing cable bridge and then the installation of the new wider bridge that will meet current code requirements. And also brings into the bridge's use multi-vehicle use, multi-purpose use. So far, and then there's a big chunk of HST. So far in terms of funding, we have secured funding from the CCTH, 550,000. The off-highway vehicle infrastructure fund has committed 75,000. And then we have a group of funding sources in the amount of roughly 360,000 that are currently the subject of an embargo, and will be released from that embargo, I think, around the 1st of March, at which time we'll be able to talk about them publicly. We're here today making a pitch to you for $200,000 in funding. And then we'll be going to the OHVF for an additional 65,000. So that leaves us with currently a project funding shortfall around 36,000, and we're continuing to pursue other funding sources to cover that and to also deal with overruns and contingency. Any questions on the financials? Okay, we can. Benefits to the municipality. I think we had to kind of condense this list, right? Because I've emphasized a few times how important this landmark is to the community, and that it's a destination. So people come to this area to walk across that bridge, to see the stone bridge, and that traffic drives local business, drives revenue for local businesses. The project itself is going to create jobs. It's going to drive economic benefit in through employment. It's going to have a significant impact from an environmental point of view, because this infrastructure is being built for long-term use and maintainability. It also expands the scope of the recreational activities that we can run out of this area. So I think it's a win. It's a big win for the municipality, surrounding towns, and for the community association as a whole. Yeah. Questions? No? Thank you very much for your time.
Well, whoa, let's go. Yeah, I'm just waiting for everybody else.
Well, I know, I just want to make sure I got my oar in the water. Thank you. I might have missed it in the presentation. What's the estimated completion date?
Well, we haven't a firm date yet, but they've done a lot of work so far, and they'll probably be starting once the snow melts and it thaws, so they can. The first thing is to put in the concrete abutments, and we anticipate that it'll be done probably by the end of September.
Okay, September of this year.
Correct.
Okay. You noted in the presentation you're looking for a 2-year commitment. Is that, what's your cash flow like? Can that turn to 3?
It would be much better if we get it in 1 year, put it that way.
How about 4?
I'm sorry, Mr.
I said, how about 4? No, seriously, can it go beyond 2 years or no?
No.
Okay.
No, as a community association, we're not in a
we don't
position
have
to
Okay.
finance.
2 more quick questions, and I think I know the answer to at least one of them. How do you plan to float the HST cash flow issue? You know, I expect that you probably don't have
Well,
a bucket full of money to do it with.
we anticipate getting some return from the government. We submit our HST every year, and we, at the moment, have been getting 50% back. However, given the volume that they're going to get this time, we're not sure what's going to happen. And
fair enough.
We've tried diligently for 2 months at least to try and get to talk to somebody at CRA, and nobody's been able to give us an answer one way or another.
My experience is that you'll end up speaking to 2 or 3 people, you know, and you'll have to re-educate them every time you talk to them. Thank you
We
for
may
that.
use your experience, or draw on your experience.
Last question. Does the TCCA own the property?
Own property?
Own the property?
The bridge? We have an LOA for it, and given to us by the Snowmobile Association and authorized by the government.
Okay. Thank you.
So we do not own the property per se.
So the owner is,
Is it us that owns it, I guess? It's hazy, I think.
Province owns the ship railway,
Yes.
but they also give letters of authority to various people and clubs for all kinds of things around the province and all kinds of places. And I believe I was involved in this way back, talking to them about this. And the letter of authority extends from Ketchum Drive through the bridge, across the bridge, and out the other side to Route 366. And that basically gives this organization all the essential rights of ownership on that piece of trail.
what's the term of that letter of,
Renewable annually.
Yep,
oh, wow.
it's the way the government operates.
Okay.
Or the trail,
Thank you.
I guess,
Those are my questions.
off-highway vehicle
It's
operates.
it's another example of the community cooperation and collaboration across multiple organizations to make this happen.
Anyone else? Oh, Councilor McCormick, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. No, I would just like to have a copy of the presentation if we could. Can be emailed to us?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make sure everybody gets
Yeah,
one. Yep.
thanks.
Councilor Lee, go ahead.
Yeah.
Woke them up. Waiting for the red, there we go.
Every time. No, I just wanted to make a comment that I really feel like I missed out on that entire thing. I've lived in the area for years and have never had the privilege of even visiting that bridge. So thank you for bringing that to my awareness, and I'm curious to see how this
Hopefully in
ends up.
September, you'll be walking
Right?
across a brand spanking new one.
Thank you.
It is probably the most photographed and painted bridge in most of in all of Nova Scotia, I think, quite frankly.
Where have I been?
Hard to go there without tripping over a couple of artists doing something, so, anyway, yeah. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation, and we'll be talking to you at some point in the future.
Lovely.
Thank you. Now, back to, are we ready? Did we get the photocopier fired up, and have we distributed the information, or no? Okay. We'll send Deputy
Thanks
Mayor
for-
Gould around to deliver the mail. Thank you,
I
Amanda.
had to grab 2, but I only got 1 before
Yeah,
the
I got
meeting.
one ready to go. Good.
And I think I got the other one printing.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, folks. Make your pitch and get. Okay, back to the GOVRC. Come on down, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Where's the clock?
Well, we already introduced ourselves, but I'm Paul Williams, Executive Director, Robert Usher, the Woodworking Supervisor, and thank you again for allowing us to speak. I'm going to read our executive summary on page 1. It's an introduction of who we are. The GOVRC Workshop is a non-profit organization located in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia, established in 1971 and operated as an adult service center under the governance of Board of Directors. GOVRC's mandate is to provide support, service for individuals with intellectual disabilities from Cumberland County area. The organization provides work for these participants so that they may lead productive lives. GOVRC supports participants by providing vocational programming, skills training, supported employment, job coaching, and other day program services. This mandate is driven by the province of Nova Scotia. It's to strengthen individual abilities and build capacity so they can become an active member in the community to the greatest extent possible. So the GOVRC is only partially funded from the province of Nova Scotia. We have to do social enterprise projects such as greenhouse contracts, laundry services, and woodworking. Primarily in the woodworking is what we benefit from we balance our budget from the profits from woodworking, selling pallets to 5 factories in Cumberland County. We also repair pallets for 1 factory. You're all aware of the remedy that's unrolled from the province concerning group homes. Well, currently that doesn't affect us, but eventually that is going to affect all day programs like Sunset and the Bridge Workshop and ourselves. So this remedy fallout is a good thing in some ways, but one way it's going to affect us, which is a positive thing, is that our clients, our adults with intellectual disabilities that we're supporting, will be required to be paid a minimum wage or higher by the province of Nova Scotia by December 2026. And currently we run on paying everybody a low training allowance of stipends. And that is the only way we're sustainable at this time. We've always advocated for a fair wage for our participants. It's been something that our organization, in collaboration with a provincial organization, has been trying to address for 20 years. It hasn't been sustainable, and there's been no plan that could work out at this point. So, however, we developed a renewable plan that is sustainable. It took us the 15 months to figure it out, and we looked at building pallets by hand, as we do now, and pay a wage, and it wasn't sustainable. So the only way it could be sustainable if we do what our competitors are doing and have a automated pallet machine, which is between $500,000 and $800,000. The only problem with that is it doesn't fit in our current building, or most buildings. So we need to build a building addition 50 by 100 to allow that pallet machine inside to do the work it's got to do to be able to be sustainable, to pay our participants a wage, and allow more free time to provide services to those participants in other areas, like life skills, in-depth woodworking training, and every other thing that we do there that's fantastic, like cooking and life skills. So we've developed this renewal plan that's going to give several opportunities to our clients. So we want to build this addition, put an automated machine in it. We need to build a new entrance. If you notice anywhere, it's on page 6. Our entrance is by far not accessible, and it's not really acceptable for any provincial building or county building or public building. We wouldn't pass an accessibility inspection. Our building was built in 1980. We haven't done any renovations except necessary repairs for the last 40 years. Our kitchen, our bathrooms, our floors, everything needs to be renewed. You can imagine a bathroom that was built in 1980 and hasn't been renovated since. Our kitchen is the same, similar, not accessible, and we need to bring ourselves up to provincial standards of 2025. So as a result of this renewable plan moving forward, we'll be able to increase capacity in many forms and doing more woodworking projects, more pallets. We'll be able to add more participants to our facility, decreasing any wait list in the county, which I believe the Bridge Workshop has a wait list of 7 years, so we could address some of that for themselves as well. And it'll give more training and more opportunities to our clients. It will allow us more time for those woodworking participants to be involved in community involvement and community employment So this plan that we've developed is sustainable. We've done our research, we've done our work, we're diligent, very financially responsible. And this plan, if it falls through or goes through, we will be in line with the expectations of the province by the end of 2026 to pay our participants a wage. And it's our goal to give as much opportunities to our participants as possible. It's something that's very passionate with ourselves and the board and our community, and we cannot do it if we continue the way we're doing it. If we don't have an addition and have automated pallet manufacturing, we'll lose that contract. We'll have to discontinue building pallets. We'll no longer be able to be sustainable, and we don't see where we will be in the future. It'll be definitely somewhere different how we operate today. So our goal is to raise $4.783 million by the end of 2026, and that's with funders and grants and fundraising. And we've been fortunate enough to put $100,000 in of seed money of our own that we were able to build up over a period of time. So we're going to be seeking funding from all levels of government of every fashion, and it's going to be very important to make this work. We have a meeting with ACOA in the next month. We've been in communications with Tory Rush in the province and past Minister of Community Services. So we feel very positive that there's going to be some things moving forward in all aspects to help us reach this goal. So we are requesting funding contribution from the Cumberland County in the amount of $360,000. That would be over 3 years, $120,000 a year. We're in a position to be able to do bridge funding and other means to make that possible. We're going to start construction in the spring 2026. We hope to be completed by September 2026. Do you have any questions?
Any councilors, any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Lockhart. Yep.
Your Worship, I just want to say from Spring Hill and the great job that you guys do, Paul. I was down there, Rod and I were both, the mayor, Gilroy and I were both there a month or two ago, and I was down a few weeks ago, and it's a very vital piece of our community, and you help a lot of people, and I just wanted to let you know that you do a great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Hurt. You're next.
Thanks, Paul. Great job. Great presentation. Appreciate it. Just a few questions. You've already answered one of them, and that was the cash flow question, and you're looking for 3 years, $120,000 a year.
Yes.
That fits. On page 8 of your presentation, you go through the funding sources, and you note $750,000 worth of other funding. Is that confirmed?
That is the fundraising we intend on doing ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you. So like a community fundraising campaign, that sort of thing? is it?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And you talk about the project being sustainable. What we have here is just the capital costs. Will you share the business plan with us?
I don't have a copy with me, but I can, yes.
Yeah, at some time in the
Yes.
next few days or week is great. Yeah, thank you.
It's in like Excel form, is that sufficient?
You're talking to a CPA.
I
Excel
suppose,
is
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Gould.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, commend you guys for the work that you're doing, and I hear a lot of good things, so thank you for that. Just curious on the federal and provincial funding, you said you've talked to people. Have you formally submitted requests for them amounts, or is there?
Not formally, no.
Okay.
We've been in discussions with Tory Rush and Stephen Ellis, ACOA, the past Minister of Community Services. We didn't yet, no.
No.
We're starting at the grassroots at home, and we're working our way.
Way out. Okay, perfect, thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Just for a measure of context of the impact that this will have, you and I had an interesting conversation when Councilor Lockhart and I were there for a visit. recently about the difference, the time it takes you to make a pallet today versus the time it will take you to make a pallet if this project comes together. Could you enlighten council on that? Because I think it's absolutely fascinating.
I think Rob could probably attest to the time per pallet.
Yeah.
Traditionally, we could do anywhere from 140 to 220 a day, but he could discuss where we would be.
So basically, it's easier to talk minutes than pallets per day. Right now, the way we build a pallet in an average of 2.5 to 3 minutes per pallet. With the type of machine we're looking at, and this equipment we've researched has been well researched. I've talked to people that have them. I've talked to the company many times. We've really sussed out something that's very good for us now and moving forward. But this machine will do a pallet a minute. It will not only build it in a minute, it will also put it in a stack that I come along with the forklift and take out and move to a point at which we can move it along from there. Right now, our guys are handling them by hand. And, I mean, they're not light. They're anywhere from 35 to probably 50 pounds a pallet. And in the future, this could grow to larger pallets too, with the capability of this machine. It opens up a huge avenue for us,
Right.
to be quite honest.
It was fascinating. I was looking on the numbers when
Yeah.
you gave them to me that
And,
day.
and the idea behind this also, it's kind of twofold. When we open up that extra time that we're now not spending to build that pallet, we give our guys extra time to do other things. In this ask is a fund for woodworking. So we want to open up a woodworking shop that within this, I'll be teaching minimum 4 levels of woodworking. And this is something I've done all my life, so I'm very adept at it. Also Red Seal. And these guys are on board. We talk to them about it daily. Whenever they ask, we have meetings all the time, and this usually comes up. Yesterday, we had one actually after lunch. Very excited about it. They've never had this kind of thing before. And we want to use the time that we're not building pallets to be in that range.
Right.
And also the additional time remaining, we want to provide woodworking services to the community.
Yes.
So currently, we have some equipment that's very outdated, 20-plus years old. Somebody comes in looking for a shed, a garbage bin, a picnic table. We do not have the capacity of time to do anything.
Right.
We're strictly building pallets just to be sustainable now.
Yeah, exactly.
And to note, we provide pallets to 5 factories in Cumberland County. There's many more than that in Cumberland County. And besides the limited amount that Harrison's built in Parisboro successfully, those pallets are being purchased from out of province or from out of county for sure. So we hope to remedy some of that as well.
Right, yeah, good. Thank you very much. Mr. Herrick, you have another comment?
Counselor Lee would tell me to stop pressing the button, but there we go. You missed your chance. Just a nitpicky question. It's more about your plan than, is the woodworking equipment coming from Canada or the U.S.?
Actually, neither.
Interesting.
European.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Just thinking about 25% more
Yeah.
on that.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
The only catch here right now we're worried about a little bit is the pallet machine. It is U.S.
Yep.
And I've gone through at least 4 different companies, one of them Canadian, and it was a stumble. And it really put me off on it. And if you look at the machines, they're 2 totally different machines. One is built to last, that 20 years later, if you wanted to sell it or needed to upgrade, it carries a premium price even then.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Oh, Councillor O'Telling, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to commend you on your plan and looking forward. I am on the board for the Sunset community, and I understand what's going on in that remedy transition, and while it will be beneficial for the residents, it is a big transition and a lot to think about, a lot of moving parts. So great work thinking ahead in terms of, trying to have a plan for the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the great work you do in the community. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much
you.
for
Thank you all.
having us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Where are we at to now? There are no strategic priority issues for today's meeting. There are no major organizational items. Item number 5 is organizational policy and bylaw items. 5.1, the second reading of the bylaw to amend the LUB 24-14 to rezone PID number 25189911, 19 McCully Lane, Wards Brook. Director Glenn Boone, I'll turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, sec to catch up here. So again, Your Worship, we've been through several steps in the planning process. Even the new councilors are getting familiar with the process. So this is the second reading, final step in the process with the exception of advertising council's decisions that are made in planning applications. So the plan for the development in this location, the reason the rezoning was requested is the current zoning is agricultural and doesn't permit the development that the applicant was looking to do and to bring forward. So it's 20 campsites off-grid. We've talked about this at the first reading. We've had a pretty robust discussion during the public hearing on the application, and we've been pretty clear on the things that the zoning would permit is applications to move forward, but there would still be a robust process when the development was being applied for and development permits were being applied for. And if the development ever went outside of the initial application under the rezoning, it would require additional process for site plan agreements, which is again required some neighborhood engagement. So it's to rezone only a portion of the property, and that's to take the portion of the property from agricultural to the commercial recreation zone. Next slide, please. So it's looked to be development that would happen, over time. The plan is just schematic, as I've mentioned in the public hearing and was written in the report. There is some final details that were required at the site plan stage if a development permit was applied for, and if council has considered and approved the rezoning first, of course. Scale of the plan would be more detailed, exact location of any proposed cabin additions or the campsite layouts themselves. And very importantly is that setbacks from the shoreline to respect the shoreline buffer that's required in all areas of the municipality that have a shoreline, or we also have a setback from water courses as well, which is somewhat the same, but just the distance is a little bit different. So again, when we're getting into details that would happen at the development permit stage, and the municipality can require a location certificate by a surveyor to confirm development phase and details at that time. As I mentioned, it's not unusual to have one PID that would be separated by different zones. We have it happen in a number of situations across the municipality. In this case, the country residential or the RCOU at the fronting on the main highway would not change. It's only the back section, which is agricultural lands, that would change to the commercial rec. Your Worship, we've been pretty upfront about this. There are some buildings that are on the site that were posted as part of the building permit process. They have never been approved, so I want the county council to know that these have not been approved. It wasn't something that we did outside the zoning process, and they would have to be dealt with through any development or building permit applications. The location itself, Your Worship, you can see the reason we haven't struggled to look at changing this from an agricultural zone to the potential commercial recreation zone. The area was used as kind of a pit run gravel pit, so it's not really suitable or have soils that have remained to make it an agricultural property that could be used for that purpose. We've made it clear to the applicant that if they were to go forward, if the rezoning was considered and approved, that it would require approval from the Department of Environment with respect to on-site sewage disposal. And even if they were looking at doing, these pictures show examples of modular washrooms, they would still have to meet the requirements of Nova Scotia Department of Environment, and they would also have to be accessible under the building code to create this washroom. So, considerations. Environmentally, I've talked about the property and its former soil profile, and that's how it was zoned agriculture. It's based on soil profiles and soil mapping that when the plan was created, showed it was acceptable and utilized, or could be utilized for agricultural purposes over time. The agriculture zone does allow other resource extraction. In this case, it was used as a pit run gravel pit, and materials were removed, topsoil, and then of course gravel was removed over time. So kind of changed the ability to use the land. Quickly, as I mentioned earlier, that we would still require the buffer from the ordinary high water mark, so that's a consideration under our existing land use bylaw with respect to environmental considerations. And as mentioned in the previous reports and at the public hearing, we have had contact and discussions with the Department of Environment under an investigation. It was around changes that were done to the adjacent property and the adjacent water course, Wards Brook. And as part of the package that was submitted and given to you in advance of this meeting, we do actually have a letter from the Department of Environment provided by the applicant, but I discussed it with the environmental inspector that has closed the file and said they've done everything they're required to do in respect to the alteration to that water course. So no specific financial implications, Your Worship. Community engagement on this was completed as per the Municipal Government Act. We followed all of the process for advertising. We actually advertised this one in this hearing that was held in the Chronicle Herald. No longer required, but we still do that at least once in advance of public hearings. Planning notice was placed on the site, as we've been doing with all our applications. Staff did receive a letter of objection. That was actually in the public hearing report, and it's been part of your package here as well. And we did have that aggrieved resident speak at the open public hearing, as well as a number of members of the public spoke. They have a lot more concerns around environmental stewardship than the particular use that the zone rezoning consideration would allow. So, Your Worship, happy to answer any questions. The recommendation on this is before council.
Thank you very much, Director Boone. The recommended motion is that council approve second reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 24-14 to rezone a portion of 19 McCully Lane, identified as PID 25189911, Wards Brook, from agriculture zone AG to commercial recreational CREC zone. If someone would like to make the motion, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gould, seconder for the motion by Councillor Fromm. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, signify by saying nay. Motion is defeated. Thank you very much. Item 5.2, second reading of the bylaw to amend the LUB 24-16 to rezone PID 25394958, 1370 Southampton Road, West Amherst. Mr. Boone, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Your Worship. This application, again, was at the same public hearing we recently held with council. This particular file had robust community engagement, lots of conversation, lots of input, all part of your package. We've had numerous discussions with the applicant. I'm just going to be a very high level of the development. I think most folks remember from the hearing and from the first reading report. This application was to consider developing storage of transport trucks and potential small office development. Over time, the applicant was clear that they may look to bring forward a small maintenance area and a maintenance facility. And as part of the consideration, Your Worship, we also brought forward the requirement for additional buffering when there's residential uses that are adjacent to or in close proximity, in this case, to any rural industrial zones that would be created. So current zoning is country residential. The lot is actually vacant. There was a home there, but it's been gone for a number of years. The proposed zoning is rural industrial, and the use, as I discussed already. Your Worship, when we look at any rezoning, it has to align with policy. In this case, this area is on the periphery of town, but it is a rural area with a resource designation, so it does permit under policy to consider this rezoning. Just give a little bit more of an opportunity to remind council of the area. Immediately across from This is a former operation that was owned by Von Melanson. Folks are very familiar with that location. That property is currently zoned industrial in our zoning map. You can see just on the lower right photo, you can just see a piece of flagging. That is actually the start of the driveway that was reviewed by the Department of Transportation in this application. We strongly encourage the applicant to look at driveway access at the very outset of this application for consideration, because that was one thing that we, did have concerns with, but we went to the authority having jurisdiction and asked them through the applicant, or asked the applicant to address that, to ensure that driveway access for commercial purposes could be achieved. The land, as I said, is vacant now. It was a residential property at one point. You can see to the left, there is a residential property. This is in quite close proximity, which is one of the reasons I mentioned before that we were bringing forward a potential amendment to create additional buffering when there's a residential use, existing residential use on a property that might be adjacent to our rural industrial zones. Again, this is a comparative map to show what the change would be. You can see the industrial lands across the highway. It does give you a little bit of a flavor for the location and the unique intersection that is the Boomer Road or the Boomer Loop. So that, as we'll talk about that in a minute, Your Worship, in respect to some of the community engagement and input we've received. So I won't spend a lot of time in this. This is just to show the text changes that we'd make to allow office as a permitted use within the rural industrial zone. It could be considered as an accessory use. We just propose doing that to make clarity in the zone. And as well, 11.3.8 to the right is just adding that additional requirement for buffers from development. Next slide. This is some information that's in your package. I thought it was important to put it up for the second reading consideration. The photo to the left was submitted from the adjacent neighbor, Mr. Durand. Just to give you an idea of how that intersection flows, shows the chevron signage which directs traffic when you're coming into a curve. But Department of Transportation has also indicated that they see the opportunity with the approval to the right by a specific location for the driveway that would avoid that intersection. So just trying to present balance, Your Worship. This is what the intersection looks like as you pass it. The driveway was being restricted further down, which is why staff have maintained our recommendation on the rezoning. And then there's a specific piece of information in your package with details on exactly where that driveway would have to be set. So I thought it's important to highlight that photo so you can get a flavor and an indication of that intersection. There's no question it's a unique intersection. It has its challenges, excuse me, Your Worship, but also that we relied on the Department of Transportation to make that assessment and provide their direction. So considerations. I mentioned earlier a lot of community engagement. We had several folks that came to the public hearing to listen in. We've had several that made good presentations in respect to their concerns. Not trying to discount all the information that's in the package that you have, because it's quite a bit of information. But some key things that we made sure were in the second reading here, report was, of the comments received, there was a lot of comment in and around public safety and traffic concerns. So I think that's important for council to consider that when they're reading through the information, but also just want to restate that staff doesn't have the authority to comment on public safety or traffic concerns. We have to rely on the authority having jurisdiction. In this case, it would be the Department of Highways, now Public Works. So we're conscious of it. We made sure council's aware of the concerns. We're not discounting the concerns. We're saying it is near a very irregular intersection, and we recognize that for sure. Environmental protection, there were some comments around its close proximity to the Shenectady National Wildlife Bird Sanctuary. The area is not identified as a wetland. We did review that. We have specialized mapping in our land use bylaw. We ensured it wasn't within that. It is in close proximity, no question, but the site itself has not been determined as a wetland or in a wetland designation. We have made it clear to the applicant that at development stage, if that was to occur, that they would need the Department of Environment not only look at it for on-site sewage disposal, but to ensure there's no issues with regards to stormwater or something that may be determined with a site visit that is potentially a wetland. Again, not in the jurisdiction of the planning staff to do that, but we'd make sure that the applicant was aware of those requirements. Public hearing was advertised as per Municipal Government Act. As I said, it was a robust process. A lot of folks from the community and from the neighborhood provided information. There was a petition that is part of your package. It wasn't received in advance of the public hearing, but received very shortly after, as the community was still engaged in the discussions around this application. So that is part of your package. So it's officially been received by council. No specific financial implications, Your Worship. Environmental, I've touched on, but just quickly, again, requirements for on-site sewage disposal would be part of any development building permit application, and the building code would determine if there was an office. The building code would determine if a washroom is required, most likely, but we will let that determination happen if it should actually get to the point of a development permit, building permit application. We reviewed our Schedule B of the municipal planning strategy, as said, so the map indicates it's not in an environmental or ecologically sensitive area. There was some concerns raised with regards to storage of dangerous liquids on site, and the National Building Code would also address that in respect to any kind of storage. And if you were doing any bulk storage, the province has regulations in that respect as well. So, Your Worship, the recommendation is before you. It has a few parts to it, as I mentioned, but happy to answer any questions should they arise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boone. The recommended motion is that council approve second reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 24-16 to rezone 1370 Southampton Road, PID number 25394958, West Amherst from country residential zone to rural industrial zone, and to add office as a permitted as of right use in the rural industrial zone, and to create section 11.3.8 to create a 10-meter buffer area from the common property line of any adjacent residential use. If someone would like to make the motion. Moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Strong. Any discussion or questions on the motion? Deputy Mayor Gould.
Thank you, Your Worship. More of just, I guess, a comment. This happens to be in my district area that I serve, and I want to start out by thanking Mr. Boone and their staff for all the work, because I know when you say there was quite a bit of engagement, there was for both sides, and from what I understand from both sides, you made yourself available and certainly provided any answers. So I thank the staff for that. This isn't going to be the first time. I know there's a lot of things that were discussed. For me, it's a safety thing, and I'm very familiar with that area. I've spent quite a few days out there sitting in Mr. Melanton's parking lot across and watching cars go by. And for me, it's a safety issue, and it's probably not going to be the first time that I disagree with the Department of Transportation. In ideal conditions, it's probably a safe place to go in and out, but as we all know, out that marsh, the wind there on a good day is quite windy, and the conditions aren't always ideal there. And I just feel that this is an area that's it's not a safe area for any extra traffic moving. And I can tell you, when I'm sitting there, there is a lot of truck traffic going on that road. But my concern is the trucks coming in and out off the road and back onto the road. So I'm not going to be supporting this, but I do appreciate and understand how much work has gone into this, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Gould. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those contrary signify by saying no. Nay, sorry. I got her half wrong, nay. Thank you very much. The motion is defeated. 5.3, second reading, bylaw to amend the LUB 25-01 to amend the requirements surrounding the development of undersized lots. Mr. Boone, you have the floor still. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to declare a conflict in this,
Thank you very much.
in this matter. Thank you.
Move yourself to the gallery, please. Oh, he's going right outdoors. That's even better. Good. Go ahead, Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Second reading again. This is not a specific rezoning or site-specific application. This was consideration of requirements for development of undersized lots within the municipality as a whole. Again, this was a process that had a lot of community engagement. And I'm going to talk about that process a little further on. But obviously legislative authority, not to quote chapter and verse, but we have the ability to make changes to our land use bylaw through the MGA. We can do specific amendments that aren't developed through a particular application. They can be more holistic in nature, and that's how we kind of approach this file, Your Worship, in this work. So we're able to undertake specific changes to the land use bylaw, can impact numerous areas or components of the land use bylaw. We always have to first look at the municipal planning strategy in respect to policy, and anything that we're presenting to Your Worship at the public hearing and in the first reading was all aligned with our existing policy. Bit of an eye chart, but I would really focus you to the right. Section 4.4.2 is the main section we have on undersized lots. It's a robust section already. There's been a number of changes done even since the initial bylaw, land use bylaw, was put in place in 2018. But the issues we hear over time, Your Worship, and we've heard over time from residents and folks coming in to get information or make applications for development permits is a couple of things. One is about the restriction on lot sizes, where they have an existing lot that may have existed for quite some time, may or may not have been approved through the subdivision approval process, but to look at how we approach that. So the first thing we did is looked at lot size, is provided it meets the requirements of approval from the Department of Environment for on-site sewage disposal systems, and that it's seen as an existing lot under the Municipal Government Act. We're going to be suggesting that these changes would allow applications to go forward. Probably the issue we hear the most of, Your Worship, and to members of council, is lot coverage. So current lot coverage restriction on undersized lots was held at 10%. So we spent a fair bit of time on this particular file, but on that location, on lot coverage and location specifically on undersized lots, we spent some time looking at what the norm would be in other jurisdictions. And we looked at it from the perspective of the kind of planning practice would say that 35 to 45% lot coverage would not be unusual. However, a lot of those lot coverage criteria that are in other bylaws across other jurisdictions are in areas that would be centrally serviced, which means they would have access to central water, which usually means firefighting through fire hydrants. It also means that you're usually in closer proximity to firefighting services and fire departments in general. So we looked at kind of creating a compromise or what was reasonable based on typical lot sizes we see on undersized lots, and thinking what would that allow someone to do and create, whether they're doing an addition or whether they're building new, and what's a reasonable size within these areas of development. We made changes to all the setback requirements so they're a little clearer, and we're not talking about 50% reduction or not. We simply went with a standard lot setback. The shoreline buffer that we had a lot of conversations about, there was a lot of input on the shoreline buffer. We've maintained that for new developments, so that was a change that was taken out from the original conversations that were held on this process. And we have heard a lot of concerns raised with respect to building heights on the waterfront lots. So often people are replacing older cottages, older homes, and because they're restricted in what footprint they can do, the bylaw has allowed them to go up substantially in height. So we thought it was a good opportunity to reduce the height, to keep that more in control and more in respect to character of what these areas look like. For the majority, single-story homes, that 8-meter height will still provide people to still do 2-story developments on lots. What we did change in respect to watercourse or shoreline buffers is this section in front of you, Your Worship. A lot of conversation around this with council, both at the hearing, but more so in the sessions we had leading up to the hearing. This is an opportunity for folks that have existing buildings, existing main buildings, on an undersized lot, and give them some opportunity to do some expansion and some increase to the footprint that they have. What we are very clear about is that we're not allowing any further reductions to the shoreline distance, to the shoreline buffer, that existing main dwelling or main building, cottage or permanent home would have. So if you're, we have a couple sketches here that will probably show that a little bit better, Your Worship. But the change made, expansions and additions would respect the existing distance from the ordinary high water mark or the top of the bank, whichever happens to be the case. I won't spend a lot of time, Your Worship, on these sketches. We've been through these on a number of occasions with council. These packages were the information that we sought from the public. We used examples of what would be permitted and not permitted. What changed from when we went out for the initial community engagement, which is an extra step in our process, was that we've moved away from changing the main shoreline buffer for new development. So this is showing you developments that we would not permit. So this is getting closer to the top of the bank, reducing the existing buffer that's there. Whether it meets or doesn't meet the requirement, on the left-hand side, it wouldn't meet it, so we wouldn't permit you to come closer. We certainly want to allow additions that would happen to the front. Next slide, Peter, please. These sketches are just taken a little bit further. Some people might find this requirement a little bit more challenging, but for example, if you had a resident or dwelling or home cottage that was set back more than the 30.5 meters from the shoreline, we're not going to allow you to come closer if you do an expansion. So I just want to be very clear about that. I know I was at the public hearing, just want to reinforce that in council's consideration. The example to the right on the screen shows if the existing building is only 15 meters from the top of the bank, that you could expand it, provided you can meet all the other setbacks and do not go any closer than the existing building line from the existing main building. Last one, Peter. So this just to reinforce that the 30.5 meter watercourse buffer is to be maintained. So any development on vacant lots will still have to achieve the 30.5 meter shoreline buffer requirements. There was a discussion around requirements to utilize the coastal flood mapping, Your Worship. That was removed from the report and the recommendations based on the fact that that data is not yet complete and released by the province. Our thought on this is that that information will be utilized as part of the plan review process. So I know you're getting tired of hearing me, but I'm getting tired of hearing myself. But staff prepared and posted to the Cumberland, Plan Cumberland website. We did additional community engagement, as I mentioned. We had a number of folks provide information and input. The one thing I will say that a lot of folks that had provided that initial input were against reducing the shoreline setbacks, and especially for new development, and we did remove that requirement as we got further on to the first reading and the public hearing information. Staff have reviewed all that information, summarized it. I fixed my dyslexia from the last presentation, Your Worship. I got the slides right. So a lot of the comments we heard were actually in support of the changes, and a lot of the folks in the comments we received, they're all in your package, were more about the lot coverage as opposed to the reduction and setbacks. Those that had concerns were very, very much concerned about getting closer or doing more development closer to the shoreline. We've removed that for new development. There was lots of concerns raised with regards to the environment and coastal protection in general, and maybe crowding or overdeveloping some of these areas that may, in some folks' opinions, already be heavily developed. So a lot of community engagement on this one, a lot of information received, a lot of analysis done. From a financial implication, there's no specific cost or implications to us, but over time, we do think there will be increased development and undersized lots, provided they can meet the criteria that's being brought forward. So that does have the potential of generating additional tax revenue, and I will say that because it's part of presenting a balanced and fair view to you, council, and for the members of the public as well. Environmental implications have talked about a lot, about what we looked at. Our existing municipal planning strategy is coming up for review, so we're going to have a focus and a lens on the environmental components. We will spend some more time looking at shoreline buffers and development in general along the coastal areas. As I mentioned earlier, we'll look to have the information that will come from the provincial flood mapping, which also will have coastal elevation information. I meant to mention earlier, we have not touched coastal elevation in our existing land use bylaw. That requirement still exists. I know that question was asked of us in previous correspondence. We're not recommending the reduction of the buffers that would be currently in place for new development. More detail of anything to do with coastal elevation will all be part of the plan review. So, Your Worship, recommendations before you. I know I've said a lot. If there's questions, happy to clarify any points or answer any questions.
The recommended motion is the council approve second reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw, excuse me, 25-01 to amend the requirements surrounding development of undersized lots. If someone would like to make the motion, please. Moved by Councillor Lockhart, seconded by Councillor McCormick. Any questions or discussion by any members of council? Other than my phone's still beeping. Thank you very much. I'll now call for the vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. I'm going to, now that, allow Deputy Mayor Gould back in, and Deputy Mayor, if you'd be so kind as to introduce item 6 in the business issues. I have to get some water. My throat is just killing me at the moment, so I'll just be a minute. Up to you.
Thank you. So next item on the agenda is the business issue 6.1, Pugwash Fire Truck Tender Award. Director Alan Cole, if you want to come forward.
Thank you. This is an application for council to approve the purchase of a new pumper truck for the Pugwash Fire Department. At the Committee of the Whole meeting last week, a number of the councilors got to have a look at a similar truck that was purchased for the Wallace Fire Department earlier in the year. This truck would be virtually identical. By way of background, we went through this at the Committee of the Whole, so I won't go through all of it in detail, but this arises out of an RFP that was put out in early 2024 for the purchase of 2 trucks. Funding wasn't available to purchase both trucks at that time. The winning bidder agreed to hold the price for the completed truck for us if we were to order the second truck down the road. And that's the application before you today. Excuse me. So this truck is what we hope to be the prototype for our future standardized pumper truck for our fire departments throughout the municipality. The Fire Service Review recommended standardization of apparatus and other safety equipment, as we've discussed previously. This truck, the specifications were originally designed by the Wallace Fire Department. They've been modified from what the Wallace Department ordered in conjunction with input from the Manager of Fire Services, the fleet mechanic that the municipality has, and also, and it's not in the RFD, Your Worship, extensive input from the Pugwash Fire Department and its chief and its members. There were a number of meetings with members of the Pugwash Fire Department regarding the specifications and the details of the truck, and they're very much in favor of this model and these specifications. So the funding was approved in the capital budget or set aside by some accounting magic that I'm not really sure of. But the motion before council is to approve the purchase of this truck from the Fort Garry Fire Trucks. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, you're going to get me coughing again. The recommended motion is the council approve the purchase of a new pumper truck from Fort Garry Trucks for the Pugwash Fire Department in the amount of $758,758.00 plus HST. If somebody Councilor Telling is on the motion, seconded by Councilor Frome. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Any comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded by saying nay. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. I know it's been a very long day for you. 6.2, YMCA Agreement. Ally McCormick, Director of Recreation and Community Services. The floor is yours. And that's it. 144.
Including your council package, you'll find the draft funding agreement for the Cumberland YMCA. Municipality's funding agreement with the Y expired on March 2019, and since then we've continued to fund the Y in accordance with the terms of the expired agreement. We acknowledge that we need to move forward with the new agreement, and so in reviewing the previous agreement, staff are recommending a few amendments to the fund for council's consideration. First, including a deadline of October 1st, 2028 for the parties to meet for the purpose of negotiating either an extension to this agreement or a completely new agreement, outlining terms for negotiation in the event a new community center is built by the town of Amherst, clarifying the reporting requirements and their frequency, removing the capital reserve fund contribution, increasing the annual operations funding to $124,240, and this is from $110,000 from the previous agreement, for the April 1st, 2025 operating contribution, and this would be consistent with the town of Amherst's contribution. Other amendments that were identified include minor grammatical changes that don't change the current terms of the agreement. And finally, it's also recommended that this funding agreement be in effect up to and including March 31st, 2029. The term of this agreement would be similar to that of the town of Amherst, and with their funding agreement with the Cumberland Y, which would allow us to facilitate an open discussion with the town on continued fair and equitable funding. And I'm happy to answer any questions from council.
Thank you very much, Ally. The recommended motion is that council approve the proposed Cumberland YMCA funding agreement. Moved by Councilor Telling, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gould. Anyone have any comments or questions on this? Saying none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Hearing none, the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we are off to 6.3, Mr. Boone. Community Energy Emissions Plan. You have the floor, sir.
Your Worship, going to be very brief because I'm going to let the consultants make the presentation. So we'll put it up on the screen and I'll introduce Jamie and Melanie and get out of the way. There is a report that went with this. It's in your package. I think it's more important that the presentation speak for itself. I know as part of the package you got an executive summary, which I think is a little bit more helpful for folks to get through the material, and then the full plan was also sent to you as a separate email because it was fairly big and bulky as far as sending on an email. But Stantec led this project for us. Melanie Fillingham and Jamie Burke have been the lead project folks on this for us, and we also had some help from some of the other Stantec teams. So I'll ask Jamie and Melanie to come forward, and I'll get out of the way.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, folks, and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been seems to be a long time coming, so we're happy to finally have the material in front of you tonight. Glenn gave us a brief introduction. My name's Jamie Burke. I'm a senior associate and the Atlantic lead for urban planning with Stantec. We're a large consulting firm with a local office in Halifax and one in Moncton, and several others throughout Atlantic Canada. And Melanie, you want to go ahead too?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Fillingham. I'm an environmental engineer, specialized in atmospheric. I'm also the team lead for the Atlantic Atmospheric team. I sit in Stantec's Dartmouth office. My role on this position has been assistant project manager, but I've also been involved in every step of the process. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, I think we've been co-project managers, really, is how it's how the project has unfolded. So we're going to do a bit of a tag team approach just to change things up a bit. I'm going to lead with the introduction slide, provide a little bit of the background information. Thanks, Peter. And then I'm going to turn over to Melanie to talk a little bit more about the science, and then she'll throw it back to me, and then we're going to go back and forth on the action items. So just bear with us for about 10 minutes. So back in January, Cumberland County issued an RFP for, to do this project, the Community Energy and Emissions Plan, and we were one of several companies that bid on the project, and we received the award back in March of last year, and we've been working away ever since. I think it's important to note that the project was funded through the Low Carbon Communities Fund through the Government of Nova Scotia, so we always acknowledge the funders, and in doing that, I'd be ill-advised not to point out that, thank you for your leadership as councillors for investing in this plan and getting it off the ground. It certainly shows your leadership to climate change, and I think that sends an important message for other communities across, not just Atlantic Canada, but Canada. So thank you. Go ahead, Mel.
So what we're here to talk about today is greenhouse gas emissions, and most people are probably familiar with what greenhouse gases are, but a refresher, they're gases that trap heat in our atmosphere and contribute to climate change. The most common ones are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. You'll see the term CO2e, or carbon dioxide equivalent, throughout the plan and also throughout this presentation. This is a standardized term that is used to express the impact of different greenhouse gases towards global warming or climate change, and it's based on an equivalent amount of carbon dioxide. Next slide, please. So what is the Community Energy and Emissions Plan, or a CEEP, and what does it do? This is the strategic plan that is going to outline the roadmap for the municipality and community to reduce their contribution to climate change. It identifies key issues and concerns about climate change, sets short and long-term goals and targets, recommends actions to reduce energy and greenhouse gas emissions, and provides guidance for future decision-making. Next slide, please. So throughout the last 9 months, since about May 2024, we've been progressing on the CEEP project. The first step was creating a situational analysis. So we created inventories of greenhouse gas emissions for the community, both the corporate and community side. Then we stepped into an engagement process. We met with public stakeholders and municipal members to determine what priorities were and key concerns. The next step was goal setting. So we set targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and we reviewed and put together potential mitigations and actions to be taken. Then we went into forecasting, looking at the emission scenario if these mitigations were applied, but also looking at the emission scenario if nothing was done at all. This all led into the development of the CEEP itself, which was submitted to the Low Carbon Communities February 20th, 2025. Next slide, please. So where are we now? This is a breakdown of the corporate emission inventory for Cumberland County. So these are all of the municipal assets. The total emissions are 4,305 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. On the left, we can see that in the pie chart, that majority of these emissions are generated from the buildings. And on the right, we can see that by fuel type, but majority are from electricity usage. Next slide, please. So on the community side, there's a lot more emissions being generated. There's 192,000, which works out to be over 9 tons CO2 equivalent per year per person. Most of this, as you can see on the left pie chart, come from residential buildings, making it 44%, with the second biggest sector being transportation at 24%. When broken down by energy type, electricity contributes to 50%, and gasoline second up at 19.2%. Next slide, please. So where are we going? This is the business as usual forecast. So the emission trends between 2023, which is our baseline year, and 2050, if the community took no further actions to reduce their emissions. And we can see that there is a downward trend. There's actually a reduction of about 44%, and this is due to federal and provincial policies that are being implemented, such as the greening of the grid and the phasing out of conventional fuel vehicles. And so while those are positives, we can see that there's definitely still more that needs to be done. Next slide, please. So where do we want to be? Part of this project, we set emission reduction targets. The targets that we chose for the municipality of Cumberland were 45% reductions by 2030 and 100% reduction by 2050, or net zero. And on this slide, you can see how these compare to the commitments made both provincially and federally. And the definition that we took for net zero was that the federal government uses, which is essentially that man-made emissions of greenhouse gases need to be balanced out by man-made removals of greenhouse gases. Next slide, please. So this is a forecast of the greenhouse gas emissions if all of the mitigations that are proposed in the SEEP are applied. So between 2023 and 2050, there is quite a reduction, but you can see that there is still a shortfall to get to that net zero or 100%, and there's a 17% shortfall. So beyond what is in this plan, additional efforts will be needed to be taken. And the plan will be reviewed in every 5 years, or the intent is to have it reviewed every 5 years. And hopefully, as we progress, additional technologies will have emerged and advanced, and this will be updated so that eventually it would hit that net zero. Hand it over to Jamie.
Thanks, Mel. We just heard Mr. Boone in several of the presentations talk about public engagement, and this project was no different. A big part of our approach to the work plan was to speak to members of the public and get their input. So we started the project with a dedicated web page, which was directly off the Cumberland County corporate site. We did an online survey, which saw 88 participants. We had a blast with three schools. We met with two schools in Spring Hill and one in Pugwash. Ryan Olton was one of our steering committee members, helped get us into the school. So hats off to Ryan for helping making that happen. But it was amazing listening to the things that the students had to say about what they think is important for the future of Cumberland County, and to hear things see things through their eyes and have them put it into words for us and drawings for us was really special. We had two public sessions, one in Parsboro and one in Pugwash. We had several workshops with the municipal leadership team, because ultimately implementing the plan is going to be a big part of their responsibilities. We had a stakeholder workshop, and then last but not least, we also had a steering committee of 15 members who we use largely as a sounding board to bounce ideas off of and kind of pick their brains as we went through the process. And importantly, all of those findings are summarized in a What We Heard report, which we think is a really important part of these types of processes. Generally, we're now going to get into the SEEP itself and the 6 areas that it includes. So Melanie and I are now going to go through each one with the goals, and we'll kind of summarize a couple of the action items just so we can kind of get out of here on time. But you have the material, and again, when we wrap up the presentation, if there's any questions, by all means, don't hesitate at all. So the 6 areas are buildings and energy, land use and transportation, waste and resources, natural areas and parks, the local economy and outreach, which is a really great one, an interesting one. And then I think most importantly of all, last but not least, municipal leadership. And we'll talk about that one at the end. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm trying to pass it off to Melanie here. But just briefly about the structure of the plan. So as you go through it, you'll see that there's some symbols, which adds a bit of creativity and fun and ease, I guess, to the reader. But you can see those green C's represent the potential greenhouse gas emission impact. The yellow circles with the dollar sign, of course, is the resources required, and that ranges from 0 to 25,000 to over $1 million. And then there's a timeline associated. So what we expect to happen in year 1, years 1 to 3, and then lastly, years 3 to 5. So we understand that there's a lot of actions. This all can't happen at once. We know there's everyone's trying to do more for less, and we know you as a local government have lots of different priorities. It's not just around the SEEP. So that's why we spread these actions out over a 5-year period and phase them in and make progress over the 5-year implementation period.
So getting into the actual areas, the theme areas, and some of the mitigations that were proposed, the first theme was buildings and energy. So as Jamie noted, there's 67 initiatives or mitigation actions that are in our plan, but we picked and chose, because we didn't want to go through all 67, we chose those that we thought were either of importance or of interest to present here, but the whole list is in the document that was distributed. So on the buildings and energy side, the goals are that new buildings will achieve near net zero greenhouse gas emissions over their lifespan. Existing buildings will be upgraded to be highly energy efficient, and the municipality has lowered building greenhouse gas emissions by using local renewable energy sources. So the initiatives that we chose here to highlight were that the municipality will update policies to require that all new municipal buildings meet net zero standards or is as close to net zero that available funding will allow, and that's to be completed by 2029. Provide municipal staff with training in net zero building and renewable energy systems, also 2029. Enhance the existing property assessed clean energy program, or the PACE program, to increase the participation, whether that be through reducing the interest rate, extending the payback period, or just making it more accessible, or more, get the word out about it. And that is to be completed by 2026. And then the final one that we're highlighting here is to launch a pilot residential energy label program at the time of sale. So every time a house is sold, they have to give a energy label rating on that sale so that buyers can know, how efficient that house is. Pass it to Jamie.
Thanks, Peter. Under the land use and transportation theme, the three goals are future municipal planning and council decision-making should align with greenhouse gas emission reduction targets and energy efficiency goals. Vehicle travel and GHG emissions should be removed through smart land use decisions and active transportation. And lastly, the number of electric vehicles and alternative fuel vehicles has increased over the life of the plan, and that obviously reduces traditional fuel-based vehicles. In terms of the initiatives, one that we've suggested for to be complete in 2029 would be to incorporate climate lens into future land use planning and the land use bylaw process. So that could simply be a quick checkbox on your planning report page that shows that there's been some thought gone into the climate change impacts of a particular development. Second one being to develop a strategic approach for the subdivision parkland dedication process, and looking at that a little bit differently, but it's not a lot of fees that you collect, but there is a financial mechanism through the legislation that allows you to collect fees, and that can be allocated for certain things, including improving natural areas. Exploring ways to integrate active transportation planning and investments into the municipal operational budget. I know you do lots of that now. You do invest in sidewalks, you do invest in trails, so it's to continue that. And potentially increase it based on budget demands, and expanding public EV charging stations and exploring ways through land use bylaw requirements to start thinking about requiring that infrastructure as part of new developments. A lot of municipalities are now requiring charging stations as part of new developments, just like bike parking back in the day. So that's one way that your planning department can start to think about things a little bit differently.
So the next theme area was waste and materials, and the goals were that the municipality's portion of landfill greenhouse gas emissions have declined through promotion of 7 Rs, which are rethink, refuse, reduce, reuse, repair, regift, and recycle, the 7 Rs of waste management, and that the municipality has reduced its portion of greenhouse gas emissions from wastewater by reducing the volume of stormwater inflow into the treatment facilities. So some of the initiatives here were to develop and implement stormwater redirection projects. So redirect those from sewage or water so that they're not headed to those treatment plants, which, where there's a lot of treatment of water that is just, it isn't necessary, it's just stormwater. Install rainwater harvesting systems for irrigation and low flow fixtures in municipal buildings. Those two are as opportunities present themselves through capital projects. Increase recycling options at public spaces and events. This was actually something that we heard when we were talking to the students. They were saying that they found there wasn't enough recycling around in the community. And they also mentioned there weren't enough water refilling stations either, so they often found themselves buying water bottles. And then develop and execute a plan to properly size wastewater pumps at the treatment facilities.
I could talk all day about the students. It was one of the best days of my consulting career. It was really fun. It's amazing what the students will say. We often joke about you ask a bunch of adults how many people are artists or creative, and nobody wants to raise their hand, but you ask that to a bunch of junior high or elementary school students and everybody raises their hand, right? They're all creative, they're all thinking, thinking big picture. It's really, really, really amazing, but really inspiring. The local economy and outreach, I tend to think of a lot of these as low-hanging fruit. You've got a full-fledged communications department here at the county, which is great. And you've got a Chamber of Commerce, and we heard from the Chamber indicating that they're ready to partner and kind of promote some of these initiatives. So the two goals under local economy and outreach are local businesses, institutions, and community organizations are supported in their own transition towards a low-carbon economy. And secondly, that residents and business are informed and motivated to reduce energy use and cut greenhouse gas emissions and increase their own resilience. So a snapshot of the initiatives under this theme. One would be to develop a green business program in partnership with the Chamber and establish an environmental recognition program. Another one would be just simply to promote energy efficiency programs. We heard from people at the engagement sessions that they don't know what's available. They don't know what's available federally. They don't know what's available publicly. It's confusing. A lot of people don't use a computer, so that's an opportunity for the municipality and some of your partners. And then lastly, sponsor youth programs such as the Sierra Club of Canada would be one, and sustainable leadership initiatives. It could be 4-H, it could be any type of nonprofit that supports these types of activities. So you'll see those being completed by 2029, promoting energy efficiency in 2026. That's a relatively easy one. And then back to 2029 for the youth programs and sustainable leadership.
All right, so now on to natural park areas and parks. The goal is that natural areas and parks are expanded and improved to boost biodiversity and to capture carbon. The initiatives that we chose to present here, they all have a completion date of 2029. The first one was to increase wilderness and wetland protection areas. Second is to launch a tree sapling giveaway. To promote green infrastructure and land use planning and building design, and implement land use or subdivision bylaw changes to require street trees in new subdivisions, and then to increase the number of trees planted on municipal properties.
And last one, I appreciate your patience, councilors. I know you've had a long, difficult day. So this is the last slide for us under municipal leadership. So you can see four key goals there. One being that the municipality is a leader by integrating greenhouse gas emissions and climate change considerations into all your decision making. So again, that could simply be it could be a notice on your desk to remind you to kind of approach things with a climate lens. It could be a box on your council report form. There's multiple different ways to do that. By 2040, all municipal facilities will be powered 100% by renewable energy. Again, that's kind of going in line with what Melanie talked about at the onset of the presentation, where Nova Scotia Power has mandated requirements. And also by 2040, 80% of the municipal fleet will be electrified or renewably powered. And then lastly, municipal employees are empowered to take proactive action on climate change. So they should be thinking about this and coming proactively with climate change projects that are in line with your SEEP. So under the initiatives, we won't read them all, but I will indicate the first one because it's one of the few that are stretched out to 2031, and that is integrating environmental considerations into the corporate procurement process. So we know that's difficult. There's legislation that dictates how that has to happen. So there's little things that municipalities can do. So we've thought 2031 would be a good time frame to approach some of those more innovative ways for procurement. There's also a couple that are going to require, council investment, like the second one, hiring a corporate or community energy manager. We know the department heads are stretched. We know they have a lot on their plates already. You've got a busy agenda tonight, which is very usual for Cumberland County. So we know that sometimes you need a dedicated body to keep track and manage some of these things and help other departments. Developing a strategy for deep energy retrofits in corporate buildings. So before you do that, you need to invest in an audit to figure out where you can save money, and then proceed with kind of a strategic approach to figure out how you're going to do it and pull it off and pay for it and continue to maintain services. Right? No one wants to shut down the rink while you're doing an energy efficiency upgrade. Right? That's not going to fly. So there's a strategy that needs to be thought out to implement those types of actions. And then lastly, developing a strategy to transition the corporate fleet towards electric or hybrid vehicles. right? That also doesn't happen overnight. We know charging stations are expensive. The electrical components are very expensive, so it needs to be phased in over a certain period of time so you can, so you can electrify the fleet. But the plan can happen earlier than implementing it, right? You don't need to build all the stations, but having the plan so that you can start seeing over the life of the SEEP where money needs to be allocated will be most helpful. So that's it. Your Worship and Council, thank you very much. I do want to thank you again for allowing us to work with you and your team on this project. It's been very exciting and very rewarding. You have an exceptional staff here. I know Melanie and I were talking about this on the way in. You know, Glenn and Steve have been, they've been patient, supportive, provided clear direction for us. I know there's a lot of your department heads are here in the room. You're very fortunate to have such a stellar team, and they've been most supportive during this project. And then lastly, to the stakeholders, the schools, the school kids, the funders, the low carbon communities, and most importantly, the residents who participated in our public engagement. That's what allows us to be here today to make this type of presentation with what we think are achievable actions. So thank you, Your Worship.
You're very welcome, and thank you very much for the presentation. The recommended motion is that council receive the Community Energy and Emissions Plan report. Would I have somebody move that? Moved by Councilor Telling, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gould. Any discussion or questions on this for these presenters while they're here? Wow, I think they're all talked out after several hours of today, so go ahead, sir.
One thing I failed to mention at the onset was that it wasn't just Melanie and I working on the plan. We had a whole team of experts helping us, and one who was instrumental was Dan Haig, who's out in our Calgary office. Dan is a senior climate change specialist, and he's really been instrumental in pulling the plan together.
Good, excellent, very much. Thank you. Mr. Boone, you're in the gallery. Have a question, I would say, or a comment?
It's not a question. I thank Jamie for recognizing the staff, but Steve led this project. So I want to recognize Steve. I forgot to do that in my quick preamble. I was probably talked out of it too. So Steve at Ferguson, for some council members haven't met Steve yet. He's our senior advisor on climate and special projects. So this is kind of Steve's area of expertise or learning expertise. So I want to publicly thank Steve for his work too.
Good. Thank you very much.
Keeping me on the straight and narrow on this stuff.
And I completely agree, as always, with your comments regarding our staff. They are a great bunch, to say the least. So.
Yeah.
Okay, all those, we're ready for the vote? Yes, we are. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Hearing none, the vote is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 7, thank you very much, folks. Really appreciate the thing. Really, really good. Thank you. Looking forward to the rest of it. Item 7.1, request for support for greater resource development within Nova Scotia. Mr. Harrod, I'll give you the floor.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. In the package at page 159, a little bit of just a covering memo from me to just as a transmittal to introduce the letter dated February 11th from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Honorable John Lohr, promoting the provincial government's initiative to say yes to a reduction in interprovincial trade barriers and resource development, and requesting, soliciting, if council is supportive and agree, asking council to signal support by letter or press release. And by way of information, also attached is a letter from the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, President Pam Mood. Materials are fairly self-explanatory. They say they'll reach out as they have further information. And as well in the package are 2 or 3 CBC articles, just providing a little bit of background and some of the comments that the members of the provincial government have made. And lastly, because this document was included on the CBC website, we also provided what is the letter from the Premier to the members of his caucus that outline a number of initiatives and priorities that he believes are important to his government. So I provide that, Your Worship, for information. There isn't a suggested motion, but I provide it for council's information.
Thank you very much. Before anybody else has a comment, I'll start. These letters are from the Premier and the government ministers, whatever. Mr. Lohr took the opportunity to phone me directly and for lack of a better word, pressure me to go along with his request and write a letter back, which I refused to do, and I told him that on the phone. And I also said that it would go back to my council, and at their discretion, my answer would come from them, first of all. Second of all, it would be, in my mind, disrespectful to not answer them. So I would say to you that I would appreciate some direction as to answering. There are a number of requests and items in those things, and I would ask you all to read. If you haven't already, please go over them closely, and we'll formulate a response back, and we can say that we agree with interprovincial trade, or to pick one, and we don't agree with fracking, we don't agree with this, whatever, and we would be respectfully declining some of their requests, in my mind. So I would ask you to all put some thought into that. There's no deadline for us to respond. If you decide that we want to respond prior to our next council meeting, so be it, or we will add it to the agenda after you've had a chance to read it all and think about it, and we'll put it on an agenda for the next meeting, and we will formulate a response. I can only say personally, my personal thought on the matter is there's a number of things there that I want to say no to, respectfully. We've heard long and loud from the people of Cumberland County on natural gas and fracking and all of that, and uranium exploration and so on and so forth. And there's a long list of things that, and I will further add a little tote note on the bottom of that, I've also expressed my displeasure directly to the Premier on your behalf, and hopefully I'm not out of line here, about the 10%, the change in the deed transfer tax for people from outside the area and whatever. I expressed to him that at very least we should allow people from New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and PEI to be exempt from this tax. I find it onerous, and it goes against a whole lot of things that we represent in Nova Scotia, that we're trying to do, and that we're trying to be. So I know the danger of being on the wrong side of the law when it comes to the governing party and whatever, but again, I think we can answer some of this stuff respectfully and not get ourselves on the wrong side of it, so, and be firm about it. So anyway, does anyone else have a comment to make? Councilor Talley, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your comments. I'm just going to read what I have written. So I'm just here today, like the rest of you at this council table, with my own life experiences to guide me. I originally come from northern British Columbia. Natural gas extraction is large industry there, and I have many concerns from what has happened in small rural communities in northern British Columbia, especially around the billions of gallons of water used for fracking. Residents in my rural area here in Cumberland already experience their wells going dry during the summer season, and lately our hotter summers that result in droughts are worrisome. We also have 4 water sources in our county as well to consider. My deepest concern is around clean water and shortages of water for our residents. Remember, recently Spring Hill had water shortage issues. So this is from the official provincial fracking review that was done in 2014, the impacts of fracking in Nova Scotia, and these are just points, so I'll read them. So 1, we do not have adequate baseline understanding of the trends, evolution, quantity, or quality of our groundwater in Nova Scotia. 2, water use in hydraulic fracturing consists of water volumes that could add stress to groundwater resources. 3, studies indicate that groundwater contamination from hydraulic fracturing might reach surface aquifers within several decades of drilling activities. 4, studies indicate that the presence of active well drilling pads increases the risk of methane contamination in drinking water. 5, overpumping of aquifers for hydraulic fracturing can result in water shortages for drinking water and other industries such as agriculture. Most of the province's natural gas is unconventional, meaning it requires special extraction techniques. About 2/3 of the natural gas is shale gas, and 1/4 is coal bed methane. The shale gas equals fracking. So you can do some natural gas extraction without fracking, but 2/3 of the Nova Scotia natural gas has to be fracked. And that's from the Halifax Examiner article last week. Fracking has been linked to adverse environmental impacts, including chemical spills on the surface water quality degradation from waste fluid disposal, groundwater contamination, and seismic events from the injection of waste fluid in deep disposal wells. Many contamination events are the result of poor handling of chemicals at the fracking site. I would like to add, I am all in for the reduction in interprovincial trade barriers. However, I would like to discuss responding to Minister Lohr with an alternative solution which members of our council, along with the provincial staff and NSCC, have been working on. Could we have staff draft a response that identifies our goal for geothermal energy development in Cumberland as an alternative to natural gas extraction? And could we request to have staff write a letter to NSFM about resource extraction as an item that our municipality is concerned about and would like to have a better understanding of through experts who are not connected to any resource extraction corporations? And I would love to hear from any of you about this. I know it's been a long day, so.
Thank you very much, Councilor Telling. Anyone else have any comments? Don't see any. I think everybody's talked out at this point in the game. So anyway, thank you very much, Jen. And yes, we will, it'll be up in the very near future. We'll get it onto the agenda and develop a report, I think, and then we'll move on from there. So thank you very much. 7.2, councillor recognition. Does anyone have, I see Scott reaching for his microphone. Go ahead, Councillor Lockhart.
Hi, this is the fun part.
That's right.
Yes, I'd like to recognize the following residents of Spring Hill. Participated in the Special Olympics in Greenwood, Nova Scotia a few weeks ago at a ball hockey tournament. There was Terry Black, Jonathan Dolphiny, Matthew Porter, and Brad Cody. And I'd also like to recognize Marjorie Davison on her, or Davis, sorry, on her 95th birthday.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Telling, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to give recognition to all of the youth of Cumberland County who are all in the midst of provincial basketball playoffs. Basketball here in Cumberland is huge. Last weekend, I was in the Oxford Gymnasium watching the seniors' regional games. The bleachers were packed full. They had to bring in a row of chairs to allow for everyone to have a seat. This is what we do here in Cumberland County. We support our kids, drive them all over the place, and our amazing volunteer coaches teach them what, and refs, sorry, Fred, teach them what it is like to be part of a team. It is a community building at its best. Sports is one of the things that can change the direction of a kid's life. Recently, I listened to a story from a young lady in grade 10. She said she realized there were two ways she could go: out to the sidewalk to do drugs with that crowd, or into the gym to play basketball. She is choosing basketball. I was so proud of her being aware of this. We need to make facilities more accessible for kids. It's a place they can go instead of getting into trouble. I encourage you all to speak with your MLA about the use of school gyms, especially during the summer months while kids don't have extracurricular activities to engage with. I know it can make the difference between the sidewalk and the gym.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, that concludes the day for us. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Deputy Mayor Gould. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for all your efforts today.